prepare the record. So, hi again. The main topic to be discussed and shown for you during the webinar is how to troubleshoot 3-tier web applications in our sandbox environment. And let's continue and see which parts would be included in the webinar. So we'll speak and discuss several things regarding why we need several servers that are provided to our students. And shown on that, what are 3-tier applications, what can go wrong with them, and how it really works for our educational software, and also I will show live demo regarding how very common and typical things can be found and troubleshooted for some issues that you may find during your real environment. So let's start in some explanation what our sandbox is in a nutshell and what it really can provide. So let's start from the very beginning. When we analyze it, how similar are typical tasks that you can do during your courses and trainings, and how they are similar or not so similar to real conditions that you will pass to your first job. I mean, first in terms of IT, because we know that the most part of our newcomers to our school have no experience in IT before. And when we compared such two very different environments, we figured out that there is a huge gap. So there is a very big difference between what you can do as your educational tasks during the courses and which things you will face during your real job. And it would be a big challenge when you having no real practical experience will face such real tasks during your job. So anyway, as you may notice, we have sand here, we have sand here, but very different instruments are used to do something with sand, right? So in the first picture, we are like children, and we do some play around with sand. But when it comes to real job, so it's industry, it's not a game. And as far as we found the problem, we tried to solve the problem. So our main idea to deploy several servers within our own infrastructure and to improve our courses is to provide you the ability to pass from the courses to your real work in a more smooth way. Because on the one hand, you may know the theory of QA, you may know, for example, Linux, you may know the basics of SQL and so on. But when you face real application and when you will need to find several bugs in them, you definitely need some real practice with that. That again can be really provided by us through our servers and the corresponding tasks and so on. So to get closer to our sandbox and to the main topic of this session, I can explain in brief that we have several deployed servers running Linux within our virtual network that contain several applications that are front-end, back-end. Of course, we have also MySQL here. Every guy and girl who comes to our courses gets his or her own list accounts to be able to log in here. So also everyone has his own instances of such applications and all required sets of DBs. And everything mentioned here is used during our courses of Linux, networks, MySQL, and web. So do you have any questions at the moment? Okay, so I have a question to you. Is everything okay? So is my speech okay for you?
Yes, everything okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you think that the pace is okay, and for example, I don't need to slightly slow down, so we may continue and go next. And getting even closer to the main topic of our current session, the most material that will be shown a bit later is related to this specific module that also incorporates all our another modules and blocks. That's for Linux, networks, then SQL, and then web. And speaking about the main topics that I learned here and that are shown within this module. So it contains several things like best ways to localize a bug, and also we debug several simple cases and hard cases. So during this session, I will show you several samples of simple cases. And guys, now I have a question for all of you. Do you think that Linux is really useful for a typical QA engineer? So what are your ideas about that? Maybe I'm wrong.
Honestly, I have never worked with Linux, so I can't answer your question. And I have a question. Do we need to learn Linux before the courses start? Or we will get all the information about Linux during the course, so we can work with it to localize the bugs.
Okay, I got a question. So we made our main modules, so shown here, in such way that you may have almost known information, experience, and skills in Linux, networks, and so on. When you come to us, and everything that is required to successfully pass the final part will be told during our course.
Okay, thank you.
You too. So any more ideas and questions why Linux may be or may not be useful for guys in QA? Okay, since there are no more ideas, based on my experience, I can say that when we try to discuss such item with especially someone who already has some experience in QA, we may see several questions that are summarized here. So someone may think that, for example, QA work is simple and you need only to click mouse and to press buttons in a specific order, and that will be enough. Someone can tell you that maybe you won't be granted to log in directly into your operating system, or someone can say that he saw only UI during his daily work, or someone can also say that, for example, he worked only with applications, so without any necessity to log in into OS and servers. And of course, there are two hard questions regarding mobile applications, and when you or if you come to companies that is specialized to Microsoft only something. So maybe you have another questions and considerations why Linux may not be so useful, or it may be even useless. If you have any, so you are welcome. Okay, so in brief, I can say that, of course, you may limit your responsibilities and you may not have the proper initiative to go deeper. And maybe, I hope not, but who knows, maybe to press buttons and click on mouse may be enough for someone, or there may be a lot of reasons. But anyway, when you know and when you know well all underlying technologies that are actually used within the software that is developed by your current or by your future company, it would be a great benefit for you, because there are not so many people who can and who want to dig deeper into applications, into your IT systems and so on, and really know how they work. But when you know how they work, and when you know well all underlying technologies, you have much more chances to, for example, build your career faster, or to get more bonuses, or to get more respect from your colleagues and your management and so on. And moreover, as for me, so the interest and the curiosity were the main drivers of my career. And that's why I can absolutely honestly say that it's much better when you understand your job, and it's much better when you can explain something to someone that is related to your job. So it's an endless source of respect, and it's a really good driver for your career improvements and so on. And moreover, as for me, it's really cool to know how things really work. So guys, any questions here? Okay, let's go next. And then we are very close to look at what three-tier web applications are, and which issues they have, and which bugs and possible points of failure you may face while working with them. And right now, again, I have a question to you. So what's your opinion? Why do we need to crash applications while we are learning? So do you have any ideas?
We get to know how the application works this way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what do you mean how applications work? So which specific information we can get about that?
If we know what to crash, it means that we know how it works.
Okay, so I can agree, but maybe you can explain some more deeper details about your opinion.
For example, we know that if we crash some part of application, it will lead to crash of another part. So we get this chain of crashes. And we know that if something is wrong in one place, it became the cause of bug in whole system.
Okay, agree. So understood your point and confirm that you are right. So guys and girls, and what about your opinion? So I've heard Paulina, and what about you? So really no one has no ideas or even suggestions about that?
Fyodor, I think that everyone a little bit shy to speak, and I think many of us has no practice for a long time in English. So thanks for Paulina to answer this question. About me, I'm already your student, so I think it's not correct to.
Yes, right. It wouldn't be so fair to your opinion, because you already know all valid answers on that. Okay, thank you. So, guys and girls, I have a very useful recommendation for you. Yes, we know that even when you listen English, you may get some practice on that, but you may get much more practice when you speak English. It's first my idea, and the second is right now we are speaking about theory, right? And everything that has been already shown to you can be considered as a relatively simple material. So with each next slide, the material will become harder and harder. So if you cannot ask me right now when the material seems to be simple, it would be much harder for you to ask to ask something unclear for you a bit later. Understood? So if you, as Ingrid said, if you are so shy not to ask any questions about that, so when it turns to session on Linux machine, it would be even more difficult for you to ask the appropriate items. So if you really have no question, we may continue. Why we try to make a crash for application and so on. As we know, when we found the bug, we know that very small share of all bugs are really related in user interface. So as we know that typically is around the following number, and we know that almost all bugs are hidden somewhere deeper. So I mean not only bugs, I mean issue when something goes wrong, right? So it may not be a software bug in the application that is developed by your company. It may be a bug, for example, somewhere at network level and so on. When we try to enumerate such bugs and to make a list of the possible issues, we can suggest that it may be some issues with your services, some issues with network like connectivity, firewalls, and so on and so on. Also, something may go wrong with your database. And even more often, something goes wrong with another components that are integrated within your software. For example, if we are speaking about web applications, you know that on websites you very often may see not their own login form, but you may see the ability to log in via Yandex, via Mail.ru, via Facebook, and so on and so on. So I mean integration like that. Anyway, we may also find something wrong with environment, maybe related to your, I don't know, language that is used somewhere in your environment regarding operating system and so on. So, and why we need to dig so deeper? Because we need to figure out what exactly goes wrong. Because such information allows us to assign the bug to the appropriate team and to significantly decrease the time that is required to fix the bug. So otherwise, if you cannot localize the bug, if you don't know which component goes wrong, you will require a lot of time from PMs, from developers to localize the bug, then try to play football between another teams, and a lot of time can be lost here. So do you have any questions and which ones regarding such diagram. Go next. So, such thing would be the main topic of our session. Maybe you have already seen such abstraction. So three-tier applications, as it follows from the definition, contains three main levels. So the first and the deeper one is your database, and its purpose, I hope, is obvious. So we need something to store our data, and so of course we cannot allow the final user to work directly with our data. That's why we need several additional layers, and the first layer that is seen by the customer is your front end, or it is also can be named as UI when we speak about web applications. So for the development of this part, it is done, for example, in JavaScript, in HTML, and so on and so on. So in Node.js and maybe in Java. So the main purpose of this part of UI is to be very clear and useful for the customer. So this part typically contains something like login forms, like different buttons, like, I don't know, make a report and so on. But again, very few part of business logic is implemented here. And backend applications contain the most part of business logic. So they are responsible for different kind of search, sorts, and every other comparisons and calculations and so on and so on. And the backend part can be considered as a middleware between the user interface and the data that are processed. And typically, backend applications can be written in Java, for example, and they are not visible to the customer, and they, in most cases, they lack any user interface, and they communicate with your UI application part by some API. So guys, do you have any questions here? If not, let me ask you, for example, why such architecture can be useful? So the most obvious question may be why we may need to separate our UI and our backend parts. So what are the possible benefits?
I think these parts work separately, and if something goes wrong with front end or back end, it's much more, it's easier to fix only front end, for example, to fix the whole application.
Yes, right. So it's a valid point. but I can give you a hint. So imagine that such application is used in very high-loaded environment. So imagine that we speak about something big like, I don't know, Yandex, and we have a lot of customers. So in terms of such conditions, why such separation may be useful? Okay, so I can provide you the answer. So another great benefit to separate our logic between different parts is scalability. So when we have a lot of customers and when we have very high load to our application, every part can be deployed as a big set of different machines. So there might be a lot of servers that are responsible for UI. There might be a lot of servers responsible for backend applications and a lot of servers for your DB. So when we speak about DB level, it is often named like a cluster, and when it turns to backend applications and UI, very often such interactions are served by different load balancers. So, for example, you have a load balancer between your customer and your front end, and such load balancer splits all requests and then passes such requests to a specific machine, and you may have a lot of such machines. So and of course, such architecture is not the simplest thing in the world. So a lot of possible issues may happen here. And in most cases, the first reaction of on a bug is that your application has been broken. So maybe your customer comes to you and cries very loudly. So, hey guys, why you broke my application, and so on. And that may originate from very different root causes. So, for example, you may have some troubles with your database as an application. So maybe it is not running, maybe it is misconfigured, and so on, so on. Or maybe your data was corrupted or missing or incorrect, and so on, so on. Also, as for network, I can say that, again, in most cases, every component of such big application is running on a separate machine or even a set of machines, and there is a lot of network communications between your customer and parts of our software. That's why when something goes wrong on network level, it really hurts your application. So it might be physical troubles, for example, when an excavator ruins your cable between your one side and other side. Maybe you have some issues with routing, and you are not responsible for that, but anyway, maybe in some other data center, their administrators did something wrong. Maybe you remember in the beginning of this year, I cannot, so maybe I forgot, but maybe Facebook had very big issue with routing. Maybe it was Instagram or Amazon. I'm not sure, but very big American IT company faced a giant issue with routing, and everything was crashed until their administrators really managed to fix that. Or another possible reasons of network issues is incorrect firewalling. So maybe there is a trouble on a network host that is not controlled by you, but maybe his administrator was very paranoid, and he deployed very angry firewall rules, and that's why your connectivity was broken. So anyway, else we may face this issue caused by some troubles with your backend application. So maybe it is misconfigured, maybe especially when we speak about Java applications, it very likes to eat all your memory, so maybe your memory is out, and that's why you experience some issues with your backend application. And regarding your UI, there is also a set of possible reasons and points of failure. And I can say that that regardless the specific type of the root cause, even completely different issues may look the same, especially if your application lacks very atomic messages about errors and so on. Because in most cases, developers do not pay so much attention to form very clear messages when something goes wrong. So you may have the same error, like something goes wrong as a response for any kind of such issues. And that means that you need to have a decent level of debugging and troubleshooting to find the proper root cause. And also, I may say that when we speak about possible root causes that can happen on the level of operating system and so on, and that can be localized by using our tools accessible from operating system, such cases are really simple. Because, for example, to figure out that your database is not running is much simpler than try to find, for example, why you have some complicated bug in your backend application. So guys, any questions here? I also may add that such scheme of splitting the big problem into several possible root causes is really simple. And as for our courses, we have much more information about that, and we have almost one lesson just to show and discuss the typical way to debug and troubleshoot your three applications. And let me in brief describe what we have in our environment. So we have our UI application written in Node.js, and it is deployed in the same machine as our backend and DB. That was done to simplify the debugging, and in real world, it's worth it to remember that such machines may be different machines, and every such service uses its own port. And moreover, every student has his own instances of the front end and the backend. Moreover, you may consider this deck as a very simple but useful kind of internal work documentation, because here you may see where your applications are deployed. Here you may see what is the host with your MySQL. Here you may also see the name of your DB account and which DB tables are used by the application. So you may also see which accounts are used to log in to your operating system and to your MySQL services. Also, you may see that how our services that are responsible for the front end and back end, you may see their names in operating system. So it really simplifies the debugging itself. And another valuable information is that what should we search in our service logs to find the possible root cause and so on and so on. And we also know by this phrase how we will search for such errors. And the final step, we know how we may request some data from the backend even without UI. So such way may really simplify us the debugging itself. And such slide is really useful during the practicums because it contains almost anything useful to find the root cause within our simulated issues. And now we are ready to pass to the live demo and to see how such two simple cases can be localized. So do you really have no questions at the moment? Okay, it's up to you. Imagine the first case when a customer comes to you and says, "Hey guy, so yesterday it was okay. So yesterday I logged in successfully without any issues and so on and so on. But right now I see an error that I cannot log in and my login or my password is invalid. So what should you do in such case? Do you have any ideas or suggestions how we may debug the case? How we may find which component goes wrong? Except for Igor, Rita, and who else? Alexander. Because you already know.
As for me, first of all, I would try to log in as customer, and maybe he did something wrong. Maybe he put wrong password or wrong username or something like this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it's not the first step, it's 0 step. And then if application really broken, we will try to find this bug.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your first or even 0 point is absolutely valid. And do you have any suggestions of what can be done next?
Then I think we need to go to server of front end, back end, or database.
Mm-hmm. And what should we do within the specified machines?
I think we need to find out is this login and password have the rights to enter this application.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood your scheme. Maybe you have any other ideas and suggestions of what can we do with that? If not, if not, it would be okay too. So we will split such case into smaller pieces, and we will see how it may really work.
No ideas yet.
Okay. So we may look again at all available information about our applications and so on. So, for example, we may have several valid accounts to check whether the application itself works or not. We may also directly access our backend by using such URLs. And we may also directly connect to our database and to see what's written in such tables. So let's look at such components more deep. Let me show the application itself. So the application itself looks very simple. So as specified above, I may use one of these accounts to check whether our application works as expected. So I may use account with name root and password 1, 2, 3, 4. And I expect something to happen. Yes, right. So the picture was changed, and that's why I consider that login as root was successful. So I may sign out. And imagine that our customer uses his account name as no such user. So we may return here, and we may use such information that is provided by our customer. So in such case, the password can be almost anything. Then we try to log in with such data, and we see such message about that. So this case means that in principle, we may, of course, we may remove some user from our MySQL to reproduce the backend, the behavior of our components, but we may simply use obviously wrong and invalid credentials for that. And we prefer the first way. So let's look at our log files and so on. So we are here right now, and it may be a good idea to read server log files in the same moment as we are trying to log in. And I have a question to you. I may use several terminals. One is white and black. So to say exactly, it's black and white. So another is black and green, and another is white and black. So which one do you like more? No ideas? I mean, only colors. Okay. I continue here. So, no, I don't want to be rude. I will use this account within our educational machines. That is not rude. That really is very similar to the account of anyone at our courses. So I successfully logged in, and let me look at log files that are produced by our UI application. So we know that our UI application is named like that, and let's look at its log files. So that are old messages, and we want to see new messages in real time when we are trying to log in. Yes, here. So you see that something happens here. We see that our UI application successfully received our login name and password from this web form. But later we see a lot of several messages that we don't know how useful they are. So we cannot make any decision about what goes wrong. So we may consider log files of our UI application as not so useful. And moreover, as it was specified here, we have information about error messages only for our backend application. But anyway, we are good to first look at our UI application logs. Maybe there would be something interesting here, but there are no anything interesting here. Okay, so let's continue our attempts to learn log files. So we know the name of the service responsible for our backend application. So again, these events happened in the past. So let's reproduce our login attempt and let's see what can be shown here. So we can wait, but again, we cannot see anything. So this case is not so. Such case is really often because in most cases logging of your applications is not so verbose. Because in the most cases your applications write only errors and so on in your log files. But if anything is clear and correct, you may not see the corresponding events in your log files. So maybe our backend application considers that everything is okay and there is no need to write something into your log file. So which another options do we have? So we tried to look at our log files for UI application. We tried to look at log files into our backend application, and we haven't found anything interesting here. So as another step, we may directly request our backend by using this URL, and maybe we will see something here. So because, again, we know that we may refer to our so-called internal documentation that might be got from, I don't know, your developers or your DevOps. And we know that our backend can be requested in the following manner. So let's try to make the following request. So we open URL, we write the IP address of the machine, and then we use another port because, as you see, our backend and our UI use different ports because obviously they are different applications. So, and let's look at URL login all. And we see some content that was got directly from our backend, and we right now we are sure that our backend works in a good manner, and we know that our backend reports us something. If we would want to inspect such content by our eyes, we may notice that that there is no such user account here. But imagine that you have a lot of information here, so it may be very hard to look at such content without any software. So and the last option, I intentionally put this option to be the last. So we may access the data that are stored within our MySQL to ensure whether such user really exists. or not. So there are several ways to request your DB, but I will choose the most simple option for me. I can use command line client for that. So I know the name of the user, and I know the name of database. So and I may write very simple thing to be queried from the DB. So do you see completely my screen? Guys?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I know which table is responsible for such kind of activity. So I know that this table is named login. And I remember which user failed to log in. So I may try to request information about the same user. And we know that everything was okay, so the command was executed successfully, but we see no output here, and that's very bad for us. And then we may go again into our database and look for what's wrong. So we are here, right? So we may ask about which columns are in the login table. So there are not so much columns, and we may try to, for example, print everything that is stored within table named login. Sorry. Yes, right. So, and when we refer to our backend information, so to our response that was got from backend, we may see that it's very similar to what we see here, because our backend works directly with our database and it doesn't perform any difficult transformation of the data. It simply serves like a connector between UI and MySQL. So by using such MySQL query, and again by inspecting the corresponding MySQL table by our own eyes, we see that really there are no such user that is named no such user, right? I mean this one, and that's why we may say our customers, so hey guy, your account name is really invalid, and that's not directly our issue. So please check again whether you use the correct name. So right now we may consider the debugging of issue number 1 to be successfully finished. So any questions here?
Fyodor, Why didn't we use the search on backend interface to find this no such user and to get to know that it doesn't exist in our database?
So, of course, we may do step second, and we may try to find or to fail to find the requested account, and we have a chance to stop our debugging here. So anyway, we know that our backend is not our DB. So maybe such issue originates from some bugs in our backend, right? So I mean that imagine that here you will see the name of the user. So I mean that when we request our backend, the only thing that we may be sure about that our backend at first it works, and at second maybe everything is good with him, but we are not sure. So in most cases, to be fully sure about the root cause, we need to pass all the chain from the UI through backend to a database. Sometimes it's not applicable, but when we can get access to all our components, it's better to find information and log files and so on from all set of components. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You too. So guys, any more questions here? So was the sequence of my actions clear and understandable by you?
Yes.
Thank you. That's great. So if everything seems clear with the issue number one, we can go next. And as a final word, I can say that issue number one is really very simple, at least in the case where we simulate the issue. And the issue number two is that it's not the problem of our customer. It is due to something goes wrong within our in the sample MySQL. So imagine that we try to remove the whole table that is responsible for the part of business logic. And we can suggest that in such case, we may see another symptoms, and in such case, everything would seem much worse, right? So we may look deeper at that, and let me explain in brief what should be done during the crashing, debugging, and fixing. So at first, we need to simulate the case when something bad happened with our data. For the simplicity, we may simply remove one of our tables in our DB. Later, after that, we may take a valid account that was checked a few minutes ago, and we ensured that such login name and password really worked. And we may see that right now something goes wrong with that. After that, we again will look at log files of our UI application written in Node.js. After that, we will refer to our backend application by requesting the following URL via our browser. Later, we may look at log files of our backend application and try to find the possible reason within its log files. And then again, we will refer to our MySQL service directly, and then we will look whether such required table exists or not. And after that, as I know that there is a backup of our database that is stored at the same machine, I can repair my DB by executing the following command, and it means that our database would be restored from the following backup. And after that, I need to check that everything is working okay. So at first, I may ask our backend by using such URL, and after that, I will ask the frontend, and I will repeat step number 2 shown here. And right now, I propose to make a short break for 6 minutes. So I would be glad to see you again in 2025. Hi, everyone. I hope that you are okay and all of you have successfully returned to our live demo. So keeping in mind that I cannot see your cameras, may you please confirm that you are here? Sorry, but I don't hear you. Guys? Paulina, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Alexander, is Fed, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. FK, are you here? No response. And Stepan? Okay, thank you. I see. Stepan's, and Rita, what about you? Okay, we may go next. So I hope that you remember the main ideas that were explained before the break. So first, let's do something that with our MySQLs, namely, let's remove the main table that is used by our backend application. So it may be done in a very simple manner. So by very simple SQL query, drop table login. So okay, and show tables within this database. So we see that only a row table remains here right now. So let's exit from our MySQL client session. And let's look how, and let's see how it looks like when we will try to use valid account to log in into our web interface using our UI application. So let's input valid username and password. You remember that they are valid because we were able to successfully log in during the previous issue debugging. So what we will see when we press login. So seems that nothing happens, and we see the same error message that is common to the previous case. So that's why I said to you that very many very different issues and root causes may seem similar. So we know that we cannot go deeper with our interface. So it means that we need to read its log files, right? So we do the same operation during the previous issue debugging. So let's refer again to our terminal, and let's look at log files of our UI application. So again, we know its name. Hi, Olga. We know the name of the application, so we want to read its log files in a real-time manner. That's why we specify -f argument, and by
Да, господи, Зая, прости, пожалуйста. Ну, ничего уж так уж и не громко было.
Ты что-нибудь видел? К примеру, пепел?
Olga, may you please switch off your microphone?
Он может смахивать на кружащиеся хлопья пыли.
Нет, чувак, я ничего такого не...
Okay, thank you. So by using the specified tool with the specified arguments, we want to read log files of the service in a real-time manner. And we also specify the name of the service and its log files would be displayed. So we remember that that are old events, and let's refer again to our browser and try to log in. And let's look at log files or log messages. So we see that we see another errors here. We see that the input of our username and password was successful. And we see that we have some very unclear message that we assume that such message was got from our backend application, but it's only assumption. We need to check our backend application again. So we may finish the inspection of UI logs, and we may switch to inspection of our backend application logs. So again, we know its name and so on. The arguments remain the same, but the name of the service will be changed to the name of our backend service. And let's repeat our attempt. And let's look at log files. So we see very many something unclear, but we remember that there is a separation by new lines between old events and our current events. So, and we see that Olga, I'm sorry, I was forced to switch on your microphone.
Really sorry.
May you please switch off your microphone because there is some background noise from your side.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So right now we see at the top of our new portion of events that there are some warnings and there are some errors. And we remember from the internal documentation for the application that we may look for such words in log files for this service. And we definitely see that something really goes wrong, and we may read such content of log files, and we see that SQL query returning something weird. And at the next line, we see such message that maybe was provided to the backend service by our database. So we may assume that this is the root cause of our issue. So we see that maybe this required table is absent for some reasons. And we may not pay attention to all subsequent messages because when you have some experience with Java applications, you know that if something goes wrong with Java application, after some valuable content in log files, you will see a kilometer of such shit. So our last and maybe the most important option to check is to connect to our DB again and to ensure whether our table that is required for the backend service, whether it really exists or not. So, and we can do that. Again, so we may connect to our database. Of course, if you prefer to use something more beautiful like DBEver or any other favorite database client with a graphical user interface, you may switch to debugging by using your graphical UI DB client, but for our simple cases, I suggest that a very simple and very clear command line MySQL client would be more than enough, because SQL queries remain the same for both your graphical DB client and for your command line client. So we connect it to this DB, and then let's check which tables really exist here. And yes, we see that it contains only one useful table that is named role, but there is no table that is named login. So we can honestly say that we found the real root cause of the issue. And after that, I cannot say that it may happen really often, but in our educational environment, we have chance to repair the DB, and that's why this bug would be fixed. So we may return to our terminal. So we may exit MySQL client, and then we may execute such command by adding the path to our MySQL backup. And after this command completion, our database would be repaired. So we may check that again by directly accessing it. And we see that, okay, this table appears. So we also may inspect the content of the table manually. For example, write that. So we see that, okay, we have not empty table, we have a table with some valid content. And let's look at our backend application and front-end application by using our browser. So we see that it works, and we see that the same name of the user and password right now would work. So everything is okay, and the case can be successfully closed with a comment that we are good and we managed to fix that. Any questions regarding the issue number 2?
Looks clear. We have broken and we have fixed.
It's nice to hear that. Thank you. Any other ideas or questions about that? Okay, so I'm over and I'm waiting for your questions regarding the webinar, its content, the cases that have been debugged by us, or maybe our applications and servers and so on. If it would be easier for you, you may use the last option named switch from English and use Russian.
Федор, подскажите, в реальной жизни, в работе QA специалисту вообще нужно что-то чинить? Или мы просто локализуем баг и потом его уже отправляем в баг-репорт, и это уже делают специально обученные девелоперы?
В основном не нужно. Вы абсолютно правильный вопрос задали на этот счет. В основном не нужно, но почему я говорю в основном, а не полностью? Потому что также в среде QA-инженеров есть такие ребята, которые похожи на DevOps, которые называются немножко по-другому, не DevOps, но вот а сейчас могу вам в чат скинуть, как именно они называются. Вот. И вот эти вот ребята, они а-ля девопсы, но только для задач, связанных с настройкой окружения для тестирования. И они довольно часто бывают выходцами из QA, кому почему-то больше нравится заниматься всякими вещами, которые касаются деплоймента, CI/CD и так далее. Для них подобные штуки востребованы довольно сильно. Либо, если таких ребят выделенных, на таких выделенных ролях в вашей компании нет, то все равно, так как девопсы, они не резиновые, они наоборот весьма дорогие, и их встречается довольно редко, вот, как правило, они уже и так завалены задачами выше головы, то, как правило, все равно за настройку тестового окружения отвечает кто-то из QA-инженеров. И вот этому человеку умение фиксить, оно, в принципе, ну, было бы не лишним, скажем так. То есть я не могу утверждать, что умение пофиксить какую-то найденную проблему, оно является, то есть оно не бесполезно, но оно и не то чтобы must-have на каждой QA-позиции. В данном вебинаре было показано, каким образом это фиксить, всего лишь потому, что у нас все под рукой, и это фиксится довольно просто. То есть, как это сказать на каком-то более реальном примере, если вы это можете починить, то почему бы это все не починить? Тем более, что наши студенты обладают всеми необходимыми навыками к этому моменту для того, чтобы эту проблему не только понять, но и, в принципе, ее починить, если она, опять же, починится легко. Немножко продолжу в том плане, что если говорить о наших учебных примерах и о реальной жизни, то, как я говорил и до этого по ходу вебинара, что когда у вас упала база или, например, упал сервис, или там сервис почему-то не запустился, то найти такую проблему, ее именно локализовать, гораздо проще, чем, например, локализовывать проблему, а почему у вас, казалось бы, вполне работающая бизнес-логика почему-то с ума сошла. Если это не зависит от каких-то проблем с сервисами, с базами данных, с тем, чтобы в базе данных лежала бы некая правильная информация. Вот. То есть локализация чисто софтверного бага, она по моему опыту и по опыту моих коллег штука еще более тяжелая, чем те вещи, которые сегодня были на вебинаре.
Спасибо.
Окей. So, colleagues, any more questions? Степан, вижу ваш ответ. Да, большое спасибо за фидбэк, пусть и в текстовом виде. Окей. Был рад, что вам это понравилось. И тогда могу пожелать вам, учитывая ваш большой часовой пояс, успешного отдыха. Окей, коллеги, тогда, если все молчат, то, наверное, предполагаем, что вопросов по существу нашего семинара не осталось. Был рад вас видеть, был рад отвечать на ваши вопросы. И где нас всех найти, в каких именно чатах Телеграма, я думаю, вы знаете. Поэтому всем спасибо за внимание, хорошего отдыха и будем на связи.
Спасибо.